because you have to send us, you know, the list of people that you want us to email the stuff to and figure out who you're going to mail them to. And we need to know exactly how many you put out there. And people should only get the survey once and respond once, so that the results aren't skewed. The survey is, that's what these reports are about. They actually go through every question in the survey with all of the responses that people have made to them. But the surveys are confidential. The surveys don't go back to you. They go back to us. We compile them and put them in a report. So, see,
so
most...
You actually drive the survey. If the survey doesn't come from us.
The only part of the survey that comes from you is the ones you have to mail out from here. The people that can't do electronic.
We don't need to be trained in developing.
No. We design the survey because the questions are things that we've worked out over the years that help us analyze the level of enthusiasm and the willingness of people to support the capital campaign. Because one of the main things we come back with in this report is this is what we think you can raise. This number, based on the survey results, is what we think you can raise at this time. And the survey, one of the first questions is, before you got this survey, did you know Christchurch was thinking about a capital campaign? I want the answer to be 100% yes. Before you saw this list of projects, did you know that this was the kind of stuff that was being talked about? I want the answer to be very high yes. Were you raising your hand? What?
Part of what Bob's vision for the anniversary thing was to reach out to anybody who's had a connection with Christchurch over the years. So are not part of the current congregation who wouldn't answer yes to those questions. Because, am I right? Because they would be part of the parish discussion.
I would, if you have, do you have a list of sort of friends or alumni of Christchurch?
We're going to start.
Yeah.
Good. You want to?
And Diane Dreger, I was just going to say that because we're only talking 80 people in this congregation.
I know.
So when you're looking at the numbers and what you're talking about, in my opinion and just my own thought, I think the majority of the money raised is going to be outside of house, outside of the parish.
Generally, no. The people take care of their own houses. If the people aren't here anymore, they got another house they're taking care of. In one parish, of course, I wasn't there for a capital campaign. I was there because of a budget problem or something. It was while I was on the staff, and it was a parish in Rockland County. And the parking lot needed to be repaved. And we talked about whether they should try to raise the money for repaving it. And one person said, well, why don't we ask the paving contractor to donate it? And I'm like, if you're not willing to pay for it, why would he be willing? You know? No, you can, it's a nice thing to do. You may get a little bit of a surprise, a pleasant surprise, but no, the vast majority of the money is going to come from inside. You can, I am right. The vast majority of the money that you raise will come from inside. Whether you can raise a vast amount of money is another question. But it just doesn't happen. Unless you were historic, the state has a matching grants program if you're a historic structure for structural and exterior work. I don't think you're probably on the register. And the grants are very competitive, very hard to get, but they can be considerable. And so parishes that are facing serious, built in the 1700s and they got big problems, that's about the only significant source of outside funding. Somebody who got married here 30 years ago and remembers it very, very well, but hasn't been back, what do you think they'd send you if you told them you were doing your 150th anniversary and stuff like that? I mean,
I'm optimistic in that area. I truly am, because you're looking at one time was a incredibly wealthy and historical people who were here, part of the building, part of the church, and there are a number of wealthy expatriates, if I can call them that are out there still. That's where I'm thinking of this church. So the historical part of this church and appeal to people. And I'm talking about everything. I've already started looking at putting in a monthly article in the local paper about the history of this church and timing that at a certain time period.
well, right, and I'm sure. I mean, there may even be. There may be people that enjoy looking at the church, passing it. There may be people that appreciate the programs that you do. But it's not generally the way it happens. If I had a neighbor that had a nice house with a slate roof on it, and I liked looking at the slate roof, I thought it was pretty and stuff like that. If he came over and asked me to help him replace it, I don't think I'd give him very much money.
May I ask a question? We've had several funerals of people who long ago were part of this church.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to recall, but have there been some pretty generous donations given associated with them other than what we normally give? We normally ask. I don't recall any. That's why I'm asking.
Well, no.
Point taken.
And many of the really big givers have died for a long they've been dead a long time.
It's a very good idea to try to build as much enthusiasm in the community as possible. Develop a list of former members now and be in touch with them before you try to touch them for money.
Right.
But it's not going to be, except for some kind of fluke, it's not going to be, those people are not going to give more than the people here.
Right. Now, one of the things that we have had, where we have had generosity, is connected with Nourish Babylon, with
Right.
the ministry,
Right.
and the ministry as it reaches out into the community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we had one guy that just showed up and gave us $1,000 check. He's showed up again,
Right.
gave us more. We had a $10,000 anonymous cash donation show
Right.
up in our mailbox. So we know that there's, and I think a part of it, it's because the ministry is what
Right.
is capturing the imagination of the
Right.
of the community, not just
Right. Well,
And I think we know that. That's part of, I think, what we're saying earlier in other conversations. Like the survey, we're only going to survey ourselves here.
you're only going to survey
We're not
yourself.
going to survey
right.
anybody else outside
Right.
these four walls.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then you talk about those different circles of,
Mhm.
those who are close enough, farther, we're going to keep going out to those
Right.
and say, if they're around the fringes,
Right.
how do we reach to the fringes? How do we
The,
focus on
Right.
the vicarious.
Right.
Yeah.
But if the
And that's
see,
where there were some surprises.
the fact of feeding the hungry, besides being a corporal act of mercy, is something you can get behind, regardless of denominational affiliation or creed or anything like that. You've built up a lot of goodwill, but if the things are about, maintaining and refurbishing these buildings, that and not, about program initiatives, I don't know that it'll only be the goodwill
Exactly.
that motivates
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
But I would hope that your parishioners have more goodwill towards Christ Church
Mhm.
than people outside the parish.
Mhm. Mhm.
It comes up a lot, but the difficult truth is that if you're not willing to pay for it, why would anybody else be? Yeah, the money, most of the money is going to come from
So that's
within.
part of our discernment. Our
Well-
discernment process and feasibility is
Well,
what's
of course, the feasibility study is going to be going to be the people who have a history of contributing to the operation of Christchurch, and I don't mean a history 30 years ago. I mean a current history of contributing to the support of Christchurch. If there are other fundings, I mean, if there are other resources in the community and stuff like that, or other resources you come up with, but that can be added to the recommended goal that we come up with. But we're going to recommend a goal that's basically based on what the capacity and willingness of the congregation is. It also asks people to take each one of those projects, whatever they end up being, on the list and say, I think this is high priority, medium priority, low priority, and that's important. It'll come up in a minute. And the reason that the thing about it being confidential is most of the discernment conversations will have been in groups, and not everybody is willing to say something that seems to be contrary to what the group seems to be thinking. This is an individual response to the foundation about, so really, what I really think. It also asks people to suggest, potential leaders, whether they'll volunteer, whether to work on the campaign, and whether they'd be willing to contribute, and if they want to indicate it, at what level. And we take all that material and compile it, but also analyze it and come back with, we think you can raise this much money. So very frequently, our recommended goal is less than what's on the feasibility study, what you're testing. I mean, which is good, because if you weren't dreaming a little bit, there wouldn't be any, man's reach must exceed his grasp. So then that's where it's important how people have ranked the projects in importance, because there are three ways to deal with the situation of having what we think you can raise be less than what was on the feasibility study. One is just to get rid of the projects that didn't have that much enthusiasm behind, if they're not crucial for the integrity of the building. The second way to deal with it is to, let's say there's something that can't be accommodated, but you'd like to do it. You could say, okay, our goal is X, but if we could raise X plus 40, we could, a challenge goal, we could do this as well. And I've seen the challenge goal work very well in one parish. The third way, and this is only when you have like a whole lot of deferred maintenance in the building that's like overwhelming. You say, okay, this is phase one. 5 to 7 years we'll do phase two. But I don't think you're at that point. Probably, I would imagine what would happen is that you would simply delete the projects that couldn't be funded within the recommended goal. You might have one that's where you want to do a challenge goal. Okay, and then you move to the ask phase. Again, we've come up with a detailed timeline about what has to happen when in order for this to work. I would train and support all the committee chairs and the callers, the advanced gift workers and the congregational gift workers. We would design and produce a campaign brochure, and it would probably look something like this.